Hi, you may well have seen our earlier films on 3 other cadences because we've already dealt with the perfect cadence and then the plagal cadence and then the imperfect cadence. And the fourth of the 4 most commonly used cadences is the one we're going to talk about in this film, the interrupted cadence. I spoke in earlier films about the perfect cadence and the plagal cadence being kind of musical full stops. They finish on a chord 1 on a tonic chord, and that takes you home to bass. So you feel as if you've really come to the end of something. It's a musical full stop. It's quite emphatic. We talked about the imperfect cadence as a musical comma. It kind of leaves you slightly in the air because it finishes on chord 5, so it doesn't go back to that chord 1. But it's kind of leaving you with a sense of the music coming up for air, but wanting to move on to another phrase that maybe in the next phrase takes you back home again. Now this one, the interrupted cadence, is what I like to call a musical question mark. It kind of brings you up for air at the end of the phrase, but sometimes also just slightly takes you by surprise, has the impact that a question mark would have on a sentence. So this is what we're talking about. Chord 5 followed by chord 6. If we were in the key of C major, well, we're going to build chords 5 and 6 like this by saying, what's the 5th note of the scale of C major? Well, C, D, E, F, G. So there's G. What's the 6th note? A. And what we do is build a triad. So I take the G and I say, what's the 3rd note above it? What's the 5th note above it? I get G, B, D. I do the same for A. Here's the A. What's the 3rd note above it? C. What's the 5th note above it? E. A, C, E. So that's chord 5. That's chord 6. You may prefer to call those a chord of G and a chord of A minor. That's how it would work out in the key of C major. So if I want to have an interrupted cadence, I use chord 5 followed by chord 6. Now you can already hear that's a slight surprise, isn't it? If I have chord 5 followed by chord 1, which is what I have in a perfect cadence, I've kind of gone home. But if I do something with an interrupted cadence and I've got something like this, say, that last chord is not really taking me home, is it? It's just kind of lifted the end of the phrase and perhaps taken us very slightly by surprise. We're definitely going to need something to come after it because we couldn't just stop the piece there. So that's the interrupted cadence. And as I've said before with cadence films, you don't have to use these triads just in bold form as they are. You use the notes to make a chord. So a G, B, D chord, a chord 5, a G chord. I can do G, B, D, but I can spread it out in some other way. So I've got those notes being used, but I'm listening to lots of different formations of the same chord. It's all G, B, D, but there are lots of different ways in which you can present it. So the art is to find a way that works for you on your particular instrument. Same for chord 6. There's the basic triad, but I can have it like this, or 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 like this. The possibilities are pretty endless as long as I'm using the right notes. But as soon as I have a progression at the end of a phrase that goes chord 5 followed by chord 6, then what we've heard is an interrupted cadence. So here's 5, 6. Here's another version of it. So you can hear it's just not taking me home, is it? But it's still allowing me to come up for a bit of air at the end of a phrase. So I'll improvise a phrase now and I'll put an interrupted cadence at the end of it so you can hear it in a kind of musical context. So you can see I couldn't really stop there, could I? I'd need to go on and have another phrase. So I might need then to go. And I finish that next phrase with a perfect cadence. So you can hear the interrupted cadence that does slightly kind of interrupt the flow. We come up for a musical breath. We feel this kind of musical question mark. And then we go on to another phrase that maybe does take us home through, for example, a perfect cadence. So that's how the interrupted cadence works. So if you're playing a piece of music, you might want to go through it and see if you can work out what the cadences are at the ends of phrases. Then you get some idea which are full stops, which are commas, which are question marks. If you're a composer, you might want to plan your piece in such a way that you've got a balance of these cadences. If you've got a phrase that finishes with an imperfect cadence or an interrupted cadence, you may want to have a perfect or a plagal cadence at the end of the following phrase to kind of bring you back home again. So lots of implications, whether you're a composer, a performer, or just someone interested in hearing and understanding how this ticks. So there's the fourth of our cadences, the interrupted cadence.